My father has this joke that he likes to tell whenever he's with his friends and my brother and I are around. Every time his friends try to ask us a question, before we can respond, he first says, "Oh, they don't really care." Now, while I do find this more annoying than funny, it is true that we say "I don't care" a lot. And I don't think this is just a line we say. A lot of times we embody it and we live like we don't care. And today, I would like to examine why this is the case. To start, I would first like to talk about how we define success today. Let's take a look at these three people who you are meeting today. Person 1 has a medium income, but he has work-life balance as well. Person 2 has a high income, but he doesn't have any work-life balance. He's working all day and there's no leisure time or time to spend with his friends and family. Person 3, on the other hand, has a high income, the same income as person 2, but he does have work-life balance. On the weekends, he's hanging out with his friends, he's taking out time for himself too. Of these three people, instinctively, who do you think is the most successful? Now, the first metric for success is of course achievement, right? So if we're measuring achievement in terms of income, person 1 is immediately out because he has the least income of the three. However, if you look at person 2 and person 3, the third person looks like he's not just succeeding at work, he's also succeeding at his life. And so I think instinctively, all of us would agree that person 3 looks like the most successful out here. Now this can lead to us defining how we define success today. Success is about minimizing the effort you put in and maximizing achievement, because that way you have time to do other things with your life as well. And this is my first truth. Success means less input and more output. Now, how does this matter to our question of why we don't care today? Well, to do this, I would like to talk about how this truth plays out in the process of college admissions. If you're a college, you want to admit a student who's naturally ambitious and high achieving, right? Because that kind of a student would probably make the best of the resources you offer and then go on to do something big. So that's what you're aiming for as a college. Now, what would a student like this look like in high school? Well, they'd probably be real go-getters. They would get good grades because they are naturally ambitious. They would probably care about some social cause because they want to create an impact on the world. So they would probably volunteer to do something related to it. And during the process of exploring their interests, they've probably found some niche topic that they really like. So they would have done some project or written a research paper about it. So you want to admit a student like this. But the truth is, a vast majority of students aren't like that. They don't have it all figured out by 9th grade. So how do you look at the college admissions process then? Well, there are two strategies you can take, right? The first strategy would be to look at the admissions process as kind of motivation to find what you really like. So that would involve exploring a lot of clubs, figuring out which one interests you the most, then going for it and putting your all into it, doing your best at whatever you think even carries some slight interest for you. But this process needs you to try out a lot of things, to introspect, to really question yourself and what you love. And that process takes work. So strategy 2 is more tempting. And strategy 2 is just imitating a high-achieving student. So if a high-achieving student would volunteer to teach children English, you'll teach children English too, even though exploration might have revealed that you care more about recreation and sports. You'll do it because it's easy for you not to explore. It's a low-effort thing that you just finish off, and then you move on to the next thing in life. And that falls perfectly into our definition of success, right? Less input, less work, and more output, because you get the same kind of college outcomes. Now here's the thing. You could have gone through this entire process and succeeded at it without caring at all about what you do. So we see how this culture means that we don't need to care about everything that we're doing, right? And this doesn't just hold true for the college application process. Think about regular academics. When you're studying for an exam, how often do you come across YouTube videos telling you this is how you learn the most and understand the most while you're cramming for an exam? You never see that. It's always about how to hack the test, how to put in the least time studying and still get the best marks. And again, you don't need to care about learning to hack the exam. You just need to go through the motions and follow the process. So we see then how this definition of success means that we don't need to care. But that doesn't answer the question of why we choose not to care. And I think that comes down to a second truth. And that truth is that almost everything today is commodified. Think about it. Let's say you're a business and it's Pride Month. During Pride Month, you know that this community is going to be celebrating their identities, and that means they're probably going to purchase a lot of merchandise with rainbow flags on them, Pride-related merchandise. Now, as a business, your aim is to make the most profit. So you'll naturally start selling more Pride-related merchandise, even though you do not care about the social issue one bit. As a consumer within the community, think about how this might feel. You know it's very evident when someone is just taking these initiatives for 1 month a year to make a profit. Something that's so close to you, that's your entire identity, is now reduced to an inclusivity statistic on someone else's screen. It's reduced to a superficial, shallow money-making tactic for something else. And if you were part of this community, you'd feel like a bit of your identity was being violated, right? And the truth is, even though a lot of us aren't part of the LGBTQ community, there is some or the other community we're part of, however broadly that community may be defined. Take the community of people who play New York Times games, for example. I might be romanticizing this, but I always thought it was quite charming how everyone would wake up every morning and then play Wordle and Connections in the Mini and kind of get into this friendly competition over who took the least tries to get the right answer. It was kind of this tradition we formed that we started bonding over. But then, New York Times put the Mini behind a paywall. And one of my friends told me that they put Connections behind a paywall too. Now, before I checked and saw that Connections was in fact still free, my immediate visceral response was, of course they did this, right? New York Times exists as a profit-making organization. So of course, if they see something that they can sell, that there's a market for, they'll sell it. They don't exist to say, oh, my product has such sentimental value to these few people. Let me keep it free so that they can form more community and attachment over it. And the truth is, it's not just products that are commodified like this today. It's our entire realities. Because our realities are shaped by the information we consume, and that content is provided to us by algorithms, the YouTube algorithm, the Instagram algorithm. Now, we all know this, right? We get clickbaity feeds, even if they're completely unrealistic and completely AI generated. Because they know that the kind of content that we're most likely to click on is the kind that confirms our pre-existing notions or makes us scared by telling us about some conspiracy theories. Because often the reality is more mundane than that, and so it's not as interesting to watch. Now, I think if you really think about this while doom scrolling, the world does start to feel kind of dystopian, right? We don't know what belongs to us and what doesn't because our identities, our communities, our realities, they're all up for sale. Someone else is in control of them, and it feels like we don't have real agency over the lives that we're living. So now, instead of letting this loss of control, this uncertainty infiltrate our lives, and instead of having an existential crisis every 2 weeks about this, we just decide to be nonchalant, to not care about it. Because if we're nonchalant, then we don't let any of this in, and so none of it can affect us. And what's more, you can be nonchalant and still succeed. So you can pretend that everything is okay, right? Because you're succeeding, and you're not letting any of the negative emotions in. Now, here's the thing. This would be problematic enough on its own, but I think this whole mindset of commodification and optimization has not only infiltrated what others do to us, but it's kind of become a way we look at ourselves. Let's say you like running. In another world, you might have liked running just for the feeling of the wind in your hair and just for the way it helps you clear your mind. But in this world, if you have to run, then it has to mean something more than that. So you'll start tracking your calories so that you see how many calories you're burning on every run. Every run becomes about improving from the previous run's mile time, or about getting certificates and winning competitions so that you can put it on an application. It's no longer about the joy of running itself because it has to mean something more than that. It has to be a means to an end. And I think when we look at our lives this way, we kind of lose that charm that running had in the first place, right? Because now, if you go and meet a friend who's also into running, you're comparing mile times. And maybe you're not as good as her. Maybe you're not good enough to get the best mile time in the world. Or you're not good enough to win all those competitions and get the certificates. Now that the ends is not working out, you probably will have to quit running, right? Because if that's the only reason you were doing it, to get all of these outcomes, then what's the point of doing it anymore? So instead of accepting that running is precious to you and now you have to quit it because it's impractical, you just decide not to care about it in the first place so that quitting doesn't hurt. It's kind of like nonchalance is this preemptive coping mechanism against this commodification of your own hobby. Now here's the thing. It does seem like nonchalance is the most natural response to all of this, right? But I think that's a lie. Because at its heart, the human experience is about doing things for their own sake, enjoying the process of being alive, and enjoying your time here on earth. So if we were to come up with a better solution to dealing with a world like this, what would that solution look like? I think to understand that, we can divide the problem into two aspects, right? The first aspect is that real connection, authentic connection is kind of being replaced by this more commodified version of it. Now, I think over the generations, humanity has always craved authentic connection, and this is why this problem will kind of sort itself out. I think it's already doing that in strange ways that we would not have expected. Take the whole 6-7 meme for an example. Why do you think 6-7 went so viral? I think this is because inherently 6-7 has no meaning, right? It's utterly meaningless. The only reason it's funny is because we as a society have decided that we're going to laugh every time someone says 6-7. Now imagine if a business had tried to come up with this and sell it to you. That would not have worked out, right? It's funny because it's something that's a part of our community, not something someone else has sold to us. And it's refreshing that something like this is meaningless in a world where everything else is trying to pretend that it's more than it actually is. So we form authentic connection across cultures just because of this one meme. So I think that we're already finding novel ways to do this, and this problem will take care of itself. But I think the problem that we really need to focus on is the commodification of ourselves and this nonchalant attitude towards our own lives. Because maybe you're enjoying being nonchalant, okay? Maybe that's making you happy and maybe you like optimizing everything. But I hope that after today, you consider the possibility that it's just a coping mechanism. That you're being nonchalant because if you admitted you were interested in something, someone would tell you that you need to do it competitively to put it on an application. Someone would tell you that you need to use it as means to an end. Because if this is the case, I think it's important to remember that not everything is about that low effort, high reward kind of success. Some things are just about enjoying the process of being human and being alive. So I think it would be worthwhile for all of us to have a few things that are sacred to us, that we don't try to use as means to an end. For example, if you decide art is sacred to you, don't enter art competitions if you don't want to. Don't put it on your college applications if you don't want to. Just do it for its own sake. Now, of course, the system is not going to make it easy for us to do this, right? It'll keep telling you that, oh, there's probably more useful things you should be spending your time on. That there's no point putting all of this effort into art if you're not going to use it anywhere in any case. But I think that it's time for us to tell the system that that's not how we want to live our lives. Because the truth is, we're humans, and our spirits are not up for sale. We want to live our lives because we want to enjoy them. And we need to remember that no matter how much the system tries to crush our spirits, we are here to have a good time. Thank you.